Hey everybody, what's going on? Hex-Sealed here, got another Master Duel video for you all. So, today we are going to be covering my event deck. I am using this for the Dark versus Light event deck. I am mostly on the dark side in terms of like just doing all my missions for the gems. I'm not usually very interested in titles, so I probably won't be going for the light side unless I happen to find a light side deck that I find really fun, then I might try it out. But I'm mostly just using this deck to get my gems for the event, and then I'll probably go ahead and finish there. I'll talk about the deck, I guess, a little bit, and then I'll talk about kind of what I think about the event. So, this deck is pretty, I think, self-explanatory. It's Danger, Branded, Tearlament, of course, with the Dark-only aspect of the main deck. Well, and of the extra deck here as well, of course. The whole deck all around. And this deck has been doing pretty well for me. I tried a lot of different stuff in this event, but I was honestly struggling to make a lot of it work. The first thing I really thought about was honestly a Dragon Link deck, and it was okay, but you kind of need to open a million starters to have plays with it, so it was like, it was alright, but I ultimately decided to just try something that was a little bit more, I guess, not as reliant on opening like 3 to 4 combo hands. 3 to 4 card combo hands, rather. So from there, I just tried to make a general synchro pile, because I mean, you know how much I love synchro summoning, but even though it feels like all the tools are kind of there, it's kind of hard to make them flow kind of congruently. I guess a lot of the stuff I was looking towards does end up using like both lights and darks a lot of the time. Like Chaos Ruler is a big example. Like Chaos Ruler, I thought, oh, it's legal for this event, of course I'm going to use it, but without the ability to actually summon it back, because of course we can't put a light in the graveyard, it's really not as good. Like, it's not nearly as good of a card. So, I ultimately settled on this very fusion-based deck, although we do have a bit of a link line here. Don't really go for that often, but just the option is nice. This is mostly, I would call it mostly a branded deck. I would mostly focus on that engine because that tends to be the most consistent. We do, of course, have the Tearlaments fusers, but without Rhino-Heart to kind of smooth out those cards and make them more consistent, it becomes a lot harder to rely on them for plays. That said, if you do manage to get off Kitkallos for a Merrli, the milling 8 is still pretty good because you're still pretty likely to hit another fuser in that. And you're also pretty likely to hit a Dark-Sealed fusion because we are playing 3 of those as well. Dark-Sealed fusion is nice because obviously not only is it good to get in the graveyard to use with the Tearlaments cards, but due to its effect, you can actually distribute it and another monster to summon a Dark Fusion monster from your extra deck. So this plus any Dark monster can summon out like the Grapha, for example, because Dark-Sealed Fusion will itself be a substitute for Grapha, and then you just need any other Dark monsters. So all in all, not too bad of an option there as far as fusion substitutes go. We're also playing a bit of a DPE engine as well. We have the Vert Anaconda for not only, of course, the DP engine, but also the Branded Fusion as well. Branded Fusion here, we're mostly going straight for Rindbrumm because we don't really have access to Albion. Albion itself is dark, but we don't have any lights, so you could actually still run an Albion in the extra deck if you really wanted to send it off of Mirrorjade, but I kind of don't think that's worth it, so I decided not to. But it's not a terrible option if you decide to go for it. The Rindbrumm is not bad. It is still a monster effect negate, although it is kind of specifically for an extra deck monster, but it also comes with a bounce as well. So a little bit conditional in when it can activate, but still not a bad option to go into with the Branded Fusion there. We're most often going to be actually using the Danger Jackalope as the other fusion material. Normally you would use Tri-Brigade Mercurier, but I didn't want to put it in because it was a little bit too narrow, sometimes just a little bit too situational, but I found that you can still, of course, use a Danger Jackalope. We do have a bit of a Danger package just to kind of use with like the Tearlaments fusers, or maybe a Despian Tragedy, or a Destiny Hero Malicious that happens to be in our hand. There's a couple of different things we'd like to send with it. The Danger Nessie is also very important to have because being an Aqua monster, it makes it a little bit more likely to fuse into Kitkallos, because otherwise if you don't have something like the Danger Nessie, the only other Aqua monsters are going to be other Tearlaments fusers, and then it becomes even less consistent as an engine. So I do want to make sure, again, we have at least something else. And of course the Danger monsters do just happen to slot in very well with the other things that we're playing here as well. There's a lot of different ways you could build a deck like this. You could lean a lot more into the Branded engine, cutting like the Tearlaments. You could lean a little bit more into like the Danger stuff, maybe playing some Dark Worlds and going more that route. I think, generally speaking, this is probably about the best kind of type of deck that you could play for this event. Unless you do have something like Dry Tron, I don't really have any super strong particular light deck like that in mind, but Dry Tron is not bad. Light in general is not bad, while their extra deck tends to not be as good. They do have a lot of disruption, like they have Nibiru, of course, they have Valor, they have Ghost Ogre, they have Gamma, they have the Heralds, so on and so forth. So, alright, so as I talked about the deck now, I think to pretty much the fullest extent. As far as the event itself, and when I think about it, it's okay. I thought it was going to be a lot more fun than it actually is, as far as like deck building restrictions go. I think that's what it comes down to with a lot of these events, is like, are the deck building restrictions interesting, or is there just kind of like a go-to default kind of best type of deck? And I think that kind of ended up happening here. I thought there were going to be a lot more options available in the deck pool, and of course there's a ton of stuff you can build, but as far as like what the kind of best thing in the quote-unquote meta of this event to play is, I think it's going to be some amount of fusion deck. I think it's like some amount of branded, maybe Tearlaments. Danger Dark World, I think, might be a little bit better, but still, I think it's just somewhere along this kind of spectrum of the deck we're seeing here. So, it's an okay event. I guess that's kind of my thoughts about it. But let's go ahead and break down this list card by card, and then we'll look at some gameplay. We're playing 2 Despian Tragedy, 2 Tearlaments Merrli, 3 The Dark Hex-Sealed Fusion, 3 Danger, Jackalope, 1 Destiny Hero Denier, 2 Tearlaments Havnis, 2 Fallen of Albaz, 2 Aluber the Jester of Despia, 2 Tearlaments Scheiren, 2 Destiny Hero Malicious, 3 Danger, Nessie, 1 Dramaturge of Despia, 1 Ad Libitum of Despia, 1 Foolish Burial, 1 Fusion Destiny, 1 Branded Fusion, 1 Primeval Planet Perlerino. We have 2 Tearlaments Scream, 2 Branded Opening, 1 Branded in Red, 1 Tearlaments Heartbeat, 1 Branded Banishment, 1 Tearlaments Meta Noise, 1 Branded Retribution, and then 1 Tearlaments Cryme. So that's going to be our main deck. And then for the extra deck, we're on 1 Tearlaments Kitkallos, 1 Predaplant Dragostapelia, 1 Brigand the Glory Dragon, 1 Destiny Hero Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer, 1 Masquerade the Blazing Dragon, 2 Mirrorjade the Iceblade Dragon, 1 Rindbrumm the Striking Dragon, 1 Guardian Chimera, 1 Tearlaments Kaliedo-Heart, 1 Grapha Dragon Overlord of the Dark World, 1 IP Masquerena, 1 Predaplant Vert Anaconda, 1 Nightmare Unicorn, and then 1 Access Code Talker. So that's going to do it for our list. Let's look at some gameplay. Our first game is going to be against Exosister, which is definitely one of the better, I think, decks for the event. I did kind of neglect to mention some of the light decks that I think are better than a lot of the other decks, is what I meant to say in this format. Exosister is one of them, of course. I already mentioned Dry Tron. Cyber Dragon, as specifically built as a going second deck with like evenlies and stuff. Actually, not that bad. I think that's a pretty good contender for this event as well. So. Here I'm going to go ahead and start off with the, I believe that was a Branded Opening Sin Tragedy, yes, for the Aluber. It's going to allow me to add Ad Libitum, I believe, and then also the Branded Fusion. So I'll send, as I mentioned earlier, Albaz and Danger Jackalope for Rindbrumm the Striking Dragon, setting the Tearlaments Heartbeat, and then passing. A pretty simple turn 1, but with this event, and event decks in general, you know, the meta tends to slow down quite a bit. Opponent's got an evenly, it's pretty easy for me here. I'm just going to go ahead and keep the Rindbrumm. Opponent's going to try to Raigeki my Rindbrumm, and I'm going to go ahead and use my Branded Opening to make sure that it's not able to be destroyed. Opponent has 3 back rows for me. No Exosister plays here. Doesn't seem like they had that good of an opening hand in terms of like comboing. So I'm going to start by trying to add back the Branded Fusion here. Opponent's going to Exosister Vadis, followed up by a Book of Eclipse. Going to sort of, I guess, defy my expectations of what I thought my opponent was going to have here. They're actually going to end up making their plays on my turn, using Vadis to summon out and then Xyz summon, using both Irene and Sophia, their respective monster effects. So Vadis is normally used for banishing, I believe, but I think it actually has that effect, right? Let me see here. No, Vadis is only summoning. I'm thinking of their other trap card, but... in any case, because I did move a card out of the graveyard, they get to use their monster effects in order to overlay into 2 different Xyz monsters here, the Gibbon and the Mikhalis. I'm going to flip up my Rindbrumm here. Opponent's going to end up banishing my Branded Fusion, but I'm actually okay with that because I've got the Albaz here, and I can just use Rindbrumm to bounce the Mikhalis. So now Albaz can pitch Mali, and I'm going to try to fuse with the did I say Gibbon earlier? It's Jabrine, I think is actually how you say her name. I have no clue. Let me just throw that out there. I have no clue. I don't know why I thought I said that's how, like, you know, I sound like I thought I knew, but I don't. Anyway. Without the ability to battle over this 2800 defense body, I'm just going to end up going for Predaplant Dragostapelia here. That'll allow me to set up the Fusion Destiny for the DPE. That'll then allow me to, of course, pop and then attack directly. It also leaves my opponent in a spot where they only have one card left in their hand, and then they have to try to deal with this DP, which, especially in this situation, DP is actually pretty difficult to deal with. And then my Rindbrumm actually gets to come back during the opponent's turn. That is another part of its effect that I had totally forgotten about both in this replay and in the middle of the duel. But yeah, during the opponent's turn, I can basically bring back either it or Albaz and then banish the other. Of course, in this situation, I would absolutely banish Albaz to bring back Rindbrumm. That would not only allow me to have my Destiny Hero Phoenix Enforcer up as Destruction Disruption, say that 5 times fast, but then on top of that, we have Rindbrumm to negate and then bounce extra deck monsters as well. So good stuff. A good example of how a lot of the event duels ideally go for a deck like this. But we have a few more games to watch, so let's go straight into the next one here. Alright, our next opponent is going to be on Dry Tron. When we were playing Dark, I kind of consider these to be the two big bads as far as like light decks go. As far as ones I'm most scared to play against are usually Exos and Dry Tron there. But we're going first, and not a bad hand. I mean, we have Perlerino and Scream and a Havnis, so that's pretty good. Opponent has a Herald of Green Light, though. Ah! They had the pretty exact out for our Perlerino here. I expected Heralds of Orange Light, but definitely not Green Light. In this case, I'm just going to have to activate the Scream and then pass. I did think about normal summoning the Havnis, but I'd rather go ahead and try to activate her on my opponent's turn to mill 6 instead of 3. But my opponent just drew and then passed. So I think when I was looking at their list, they had quite a few like different Heralds and Disruption cards. So maybe they're a bit clogged on those, who knows. But in any case, going to go ahead and use the Nessie and try to get this Havnis off here. But no such luck. Did not end up discarding her. So we're just going to go ahead and pivot into the Anaconda and fuse for the DPE while we still can. Fusion Destiny can use materials from hand and deck, so I wanted to make sure we were able to summon DP. Plus, I think it was also still just the best play here. So, gonna battle with the DPE and get in with the Vert as well before passing over to our opponent here. Alright, they have a Dawn of the Herald, so here comes that Herald of Perfection. I'm gonna get Ritual Summoned by using the Cyber Angel Edanten. Coming on attack mode, kind of surprising, but Edanten does allow the Herald to gain some extra attack points here. So I'm going to go ahead and use my DPE now before they add another fairy to hand. The Herald of Perfection will activate, so that'll get negated, but I do get to use my Havnis effect in response. And my opponent's last card is not a fairy, or at least if it is, they decided not to negate the Havnis. So DPE is going to get destroyed, but it will still be able to come back, assuming my opponent doesn't negate that effect. They get to add the Edanten. We didn't really mill anything off of the Havnis, but we do get to still get some mills in with the Scream. Also get to chain block my Aluber and DP's effects here, which is nice against the Herald. So Scream's going to mill 3 more. There's Scheiren and Tragedy with the Branded Fusion, so that's a potential setup for the next turn. I'm going to activate both effects, chain blocking the Scheiren with the Tragedy, and opponent's just going to concede at this point. Although they do have the Herald of Perfection up with a fairy in hand, that's all they have. It's just one negation destruction, and that's not going to be nearly enough in order to overcome all the plays that I'm about to set up here. So, good stuff. Definitely what we want a game like that, or how we want a game like that to end up going. So, do still have a couple more duels. Let's go straight to the next one here. Alright, this game is against PSI Frame. I think this is the loner deck, actually. I should have checked, but if it is the loner deck, it's actually a pretty good loner deck. It's got a pretty nice extra deck, and PSI Frame is not a bad choice for the light side, especially again as far as the loner decks go. So we're going to be taking the first turn, which actually makes sense. I feel like PSI Frame definitely wants to go second, just by the nature of, you know, not having monsters in order to activate your effects. But it's going to gamma the Aluber here, but thankfully we already have the Branded Fusion in hand. Not only that, we also have the Danger Nessie with the Tearlaments Scheiren, so we have a pretty nice setup to potentially go ahead and do some tier plays as well. Gonna fuse, again, the Danger Jackalope with the Albaz in order to summon the Rindbrumm, then activate Danger Nessie effect. Nessie is going to hit the Scheiren, summoning itself and then drawing a card, and of course also activating Scheiren's effect, fusing the Scheiren with the Nessie in order to summon the Tearlaments Kitkallos here. Now we get to activate Kitkallos' effect. Gonna add ourselves Tearlaments Merrli, and then activate Kitkallos' other effect to summon Merrli. We're gonna mill 5 with the Kit and 3 with the Merrli, mill an 8, and we are feeling pretty great here. Let's see what we end up hitting. We hit a lot of cards actually. We hit the Havnis, we have a Despian Tragedy as well. We set up a Mali in the graveyard, so that's not too bad either. Despian Tragedy, we'll go ahead and add the Aluber. And then Havnis is going to end up fusing with that Kitkallos, not to make roll close because she is water, but rather the Predaplant Dragostapelia. So we do get some monster effect negation, which is pretty nice. Here I ended up summoning Mali and Denier, but that was a bit of a misplay because I used Branded Retribution. I'm not actually able to link summon the IP like I thought I was able to, just wasn't even thinking about it. But if nothing else, I suppose we have a couple of extra bodies on the board to potentially defend with. Opponent's going to start by using Psychic Path to add back the 2 PSI Frame monsters that were banished during the end phase. Not a bad start there. We're going to be using Side Mining, pitching that Driver. Makes sense to pitch Driver because it can still be summoned from the graveyard for all the various effects there. Opponent's going to summon Lady Debug. I'll go ahead and negate that with the Dragostapelia. I'm thinking that the Search is not only relevant, but maybe the fact that she's level 4 might be a part of my opponent's plays, but I'm not too sure. Opponent's going to summon Cyber's Converter. Battling over my Destiny Hero monsters, which is fine with me. I'm not concerned about that. Because Denier can just summon itself, put back the banished Mali, and then Mali can summon Mali again. Opponent's going to link in a Lambda, set 1, and then pass. Lambda will allow them to use that Gamma that I know is in their hand, and they probably have another PSI Frame card. I'm at least guessing that they do. PSI Frame Circuit will then allow them to immediately Synchro Summon after they summon with Gamma there. So we're going to go ahead and bait out the Gamma here. I'm going to do so with the Aluber. I figure, I'm going to have to activate monster effects at some point this turn, so let's go ahead and get this over with. Opponent is sure enough going to then use the Circuit to immediately Synchro the Gamma and Driver into PSI Frame Lord Omega. Going to use Tragedy's effect to add the Branded Fusion back to my board and then activate it. And opponent's going to concede at that point. Although they did manage to negate an effect with the Gamma and some of the PSI Frame Lord Omega, which is what their deck is trying to do. I just had too much set up for my first turn for it to matter. Had they been able to stop my turn 1 and I didn't have anything else, then they would be in a much better spot. But, with PSI Frame, that is kind of one of the deck's weaknesses, is you have to stop everything, because if anything sticks, you have a hard time dealing with it after it's already on the board. So we do have one final duel to take a look at. Let's go straight into it. And our final opponent is going to be on Hero, because sometimes in this event you will actually end up getting matched against the same attribute that you are playing. So in this case we are up against the Hero opponent. Hero, I will say, if you have the deck, is definitely not a bad choice for this event either, as pretty much every relevant Hero card for the most part is already dark anyway. So it's just a lot of your extra deck it seems like you don't have as much access to, but in any case, opponent's going to D-Force for the Plasma and end up fusing it away to summon the DPE, normal summoning Decider, and then, yeah, passing. So, not the most impactful start, but, they did end with a DPE, which, as I mentioned earlier, is not too bad, but our hand is all gas here. It is too good for just DPE to be enough to stop it. So I'm actually going to start by trying to see if I can use Danger Nessie to get some plays, but I end up discarding Nessie itself. Jackalope, it's going to be the same story. Once again, Jackalope is going to discard itself. So Scheiren's going to end up having to send the Merrli here in order to get our play started, but it's actually not the worst thing in the world, because we get to actually activate both Merrli and Havnis this way, and then Despian Tragedy as well. So that ended up being a really good mill 3 there. Adding the Aluber, and by the way, we have not used our normal summon yet. You might have seen it there for a moment, but let me show you again. Yeah, we have not used our normal summon yet, and we already have the Branded Fusion. We're going to have plays for days here. To be fair, there are a lot of hands in an event like this where DPE would have been enough by itself to stop me from making plays, but this ain't it. This ain't it. This is not one of those hands. So Kitkallos' effect is going to add and then summon Merrli, milling 8, feeling great, etc, etc. The mill 8's not going to do a whole lot here, but we have Foolish to pick up the slack, although I end up sending Havnis, which I had already sent earlier and just totally forgot. But, I mean, like I said, yeah, we have so much advantage here, it just doesn't matter at all. Got a Branded Fusion, throw down the Rindbrumm in the extra monster zone, and then at this point the opponent's going to concede. I'll admit, I was getting a little anxious at this point. They hadn't used the DPE just yet, and I was thinking that I needed to kind of force it, or just find some way to kind of get rid of it. And as soon as Rindbrumm hit the board, like at that point, a DPE activates, I can negate and then bounce it. And my opponent, realizing this, just decided to ultimately concede. So there we have it. There are the event games here. Again, as far as the event goes, I'm having an okay time playing in it, but it's just not as expansive deck building wise as I had hoped or thought it would be. So not terrible, but not great. In any case, let's go ahead and move now to our outro. Alright everybody, thank you so much for watching all the way to the very end of the video like this. That means a whole lot to me. Not just personally, but it's also a great way of supporting the channel as well. If you're interested in supporting the channel in other means, you can of course feel free to comment and or subscribe right here on YouTube. I'm always looking to the comments section. You guys leave some pretty awesome feedback as far as like constructive criticism goes when it comes to deck building, gameplay, channel content, all that stuff. So feel free to leave your opinion down there. I will be sure to take a look at that there. And then subscribing is going to be the best way to get notifications of when these videos drop. That does happen every day, by the way, so if you're looking for daily Master Duel content, you've come to the right place. And there are more places where you can get some daily Master Duel content. If you check out the description below, follow the top link over to my Patreon page. There, for just $5 a month, which is as much as you pay for a booster pack, you'll find a lot more value than a pack full of filler over there. We've got some previews for content upcoming here on the channel. We've got some exclusive games that are only posted over on Patreon over there. We've got some Q&As, and then you can also have your name featured in this lovely credit sequence where I thank all of the people who are helping contribute over there on Patreon. It's a huge support to the channel, and it really means a lot as well. So thank you everyone who is donating that is featured here on screen. And again, you know, it's not just a pure donation. You do get some more daily Master Duel content over there just for being a part of the Patreon. But I think that's about all the time that I have for today's video. Once again, I just want to thank you so very much for sticking all the way to the end of the video. Again, it just means a lot, as I do put a decent amount of work into getting these videos out every single day. But that's about all the time that I've got for now. So without further ado, this is Hex-Sealed. I'm signing out, and I hope you have a fantastic day.